Here's a truth most men don't want to hear. Being smart doesn't automatically make you attractive to women. In fact, some of the smartest, most successful men I know are unknowingly sabotaging their chances with women every single day. And it's not because they're bad people or lack charm. It's because they're making avoidable mistakes that kill attraction, often without realizing it. Let me break it down for you. Women don't just fall for intelligence or success alone. We're drawn to emotional confidence, authenticity, subtle power, and the ability to create desire without needing validation. When a man fumbles in these areas, even slightly, it can turn a promising connection into frustration or disinterest, no matter how smart he is. The mistakes I'm talking about aren't flashy or obvious. They're things like over-explaining yourself, seeking constant approval, misreading signals, or trying too hard to impress. Sometimes it's as simple as the way you text or how you respond when we pull away slightly. These errors may seem minor to you, but to a woman, they're glaring. And once the attraction dips, it's hard to recover because women respond emotionally, not logically, to men's behavior. In this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain and show you the 7 biggest mistakes smart men make with women. I'll explain why they happen, how they affect attraction, and most importantly, what you can do differently to avoid them. Think of this as a guide to understanding how women actually feel and respond in real-life situations. Not theory, not fluff, just honest insight that works. By the end, you'll see why even intelligent, capable men can struggle in relationships and dating, and you'll learn practical ways to fix these mistakes. If you're ready to hear the truth and take your game from good to irresistible, pay close attention because these insights are going to change how you approach women forever. 1. Trying too hard makes you invisible. One of the biggest mistakes even smart men make is trying too hard to impress a woman. It sounds counterintuitive, right? You think the more you show your skills, success or charm, the more she'll notice you. But here's the truth. Over-effort often backfires. When a man tries too hard, he loses the subtle confidence that actually draws women in. It becomes obvious, and we notice. Not in a good way. I remember a man I liked who was incredibly intelligent and successful. At first, I was impressed, but then I noticed he kept doing things to prove himself to me. He would overanalyze our conversations, offer long explanations for everything he said, and try to anticipate what would make me like him more. It wasn't charming, it was exhausting. Suddenly, his intelligence felt forced, and I started tuning out. The more he tried, the less I felt drawn to him, even though he was exactly the type of man I normally would be interested in. Women are wired to respond to confidence that feels effortless. When a man shows us who he is naturally, without over-efforting to earn attention or approval, it creates attraction. Trying too hard removes the tension and mystery that make desire grow. It shifts the dynamic from curiosity and admiration to obligation and pressure. We start questioning our own feelings, and the emotional pull diminishes. The key here isn't to stop being thoughtful or considerate. It's about balance. Show interest, but don't overcompensate. Let her discover your value gradually. Allow space for her to be curious, to invest emotionally, and to notice the things that make you unique without you forcing it. Effort should feel natural and proportional, not desperate or rehearsed. Smart men often miss this because they equate effort with results. They believe the more they do, the more she'll like them. But attraction isn't transactional. It's emotional, subtle, and psychological. The men who succeed aren't those who push the hardest. They're the ones who remain grounded, confident, and measured in their approach. They don't lose themselves trying to impress. They allow their natural qualities to shine. And that's what makes women truly notice them. So the lesson is simple. Ease up, be present, be confident, and let your authenticity carry the weight. Trying too hard makes you invisible, but being genuine makes you unforgettable. 2. Over-explaining yourself kills the mystery. Here's something every man needs to hear. Women are attracted to men who are confident in their words, actions, and decisions. Over-explaining yourself doesn't show intelligence or thoughtfulness. It shows insecurity. When a man feels the need to justify every action, clarify every statement, or defend every choice, it diminishes the intrigue and the sense of mystery that initially draws us in. Women notice subtle confidence. When you speak with certainty, even without saying too much, it communicates that you are comfortable in your own skin. Over-explaining signals the opposite. That you're seeking approval or validation. That may come across as thoughtful in your mind, but in reality, it often triggers disinterest or emotional fatigue. Confidence, calmness, and decisiveness are far more attractive than words stacked to prove a point. Another reason over-explaining backfires is that it interrupts natural curiosity. Mystery creates desire. When a woman doesn't have to understand everything immediately, she engages more mentally and emotionally. She starts observing, wondering, and reflecting, all of which deepen attraction. Over-explaining fills that space, leaving little room for intrigue and emotional pull. Smart men often fall into this trap because they want to be understood, appreciated, and respected for their thoughts. But respect and admiration are earned through subtlety, action, and presence, not over-clarification. Women respond to energy, tone, and intent more than words. The more you feel the need to explain, the less your natural charm shines through. The key takeaway here is balance. Communicate clearly, express yourself when needed, but resist the urge to justify, lecture, or rationalize. Let your actions and confidence do the talking. Allow her to notice your qualities naturally without having to spell everything out. In short, mystery is powerful. Women don't want to decode every thought you have or hear your reasoning for every choice. We want to feel intrigued, respected, and mentally stimulated by your presence. Over-explaining destroys that dynamic and replaces curiosity with exhaustion. Keep it simple. Keep it confident. Keep her wanting more, not less. 3. Being too nice doesn't make her love you. Let's be real. Being kind, considerate, and respectful is great. But there's a fine line between being genuinely nice and being too nice. When a man overextends his kindness, constantly agrees with everything, or puts her comfort above all else, it often diminishes attraction. Women aren't drawn to men who are entirely agreeable or who sacrifice their own needs just to keep us happy. Here's what actually happens. When a man is too accommodating, it sends subtle signals that he lacks boundaries or confidence. We notice if he can't say no, or if he bends over backward for approval. That predictability makes him feel safe. Yes, but safe doesn't always equal exciting or desirable. Desire often thrives on a mix of challenge, confidence, and emotional presence. When everything is smooth, easy, and agreeable, that tension disappears, and with it, the spark. Being too nice also creates imbalance. Women are naturally drawn to men who have their own priorities, opinions, and life outside of us. If you're always bending to our needs, it erodes that dynamic. It makes you feel like your value is measured by how well you can please her rather than the intrinsic qualities that make you unique. That's not attractive. It's dependency disguised as niceness. Another truth is that women pay attention to subtle energy. When a man is too eager to please, it often comes across as anxious or insecure, even if he doesn't realize it. We respond to emotional confidence, men who are comfortable with themselves and their choices. When you maintain self-respect and assert boundaries, we feel the pull. When you over-accommodate, we feel less invested emotionally. Kindness is attractive when it's balanced with strength, confidence, and a sense of purpose. Women want a man who is thoughtful but not predictable, who can listen but also hold his ground, who can be present without losing himself. That combination of care and confidence creates real desire. So, the lesson here is subtle but powerful. Don't mistake being too nice for being attractive. Stand your ground, prioritize yourself, and express your kindness selectively and intentionally. That's how women start to respect, desire, and emotionally invest in a man. Not just like him, but truly feel drawn to him. 4. Ignoring emotional signals is a deal breaker. Here's something men often miss. Women communicate constantly through subtle emotional signals, and ignoring them is one of the quickest ways to kill attraction. We don't always spell out how we feel. It's rarely that simple. But when a man notices, responds appropriately, and engages with those signals, it deepens connection. When he doesn't, it creates frustration, doubt, and emotional distance. Emotional awareness isn't about guessing mind games. It's about noticing shifts in tone, energy, or body language, and responding with presence and understanding. When a woman expresses interest, excitement, or even concern, she's giving you a window into her feelings. Ignoring that is like ignoring the most important part of the conversation. And women notice. Over time, consistent inattention erodes attraction. Many smart men think logic and reason will carry them through. They believe if they're witty, accomplished, or interesting, emotional nuances don't matter. But women respond to emotional intelligence first. Emotional neglect, even small, subtle instances, signals disinterest or self-absorption. It doesn't matter how smart or successful you are. If we feel unseen, the attraction fades. It's also about timing and acknowledgement. When a woman opens up, even briefly, to share excitement, vulnerability, or curiosity, that moment is powerful. Responding with empathy, genuine curiosity, or engagement strengthens the bond. Ignoring it or brushing it off communicates that her emotions don't matter to you. Over time, that builds distance and decreases desire. Another point, emotional connection isn't always verbal. Sometimes it's subtle cues, laughter, touch, eye contact, or body language. Being attuned to these is just as important as listening to words. Women notice when a man gets it emotionally. It makes him feel grounded, attractive, and trustworthy. So here's the bottom line. Intelligence, charm, and success are attractive, but emotional awareness is non-negotiable. Ignoring emotional signals isn't just a small mistake. It's a deal breaker. Pay attention, engage thoughtfully, and let your presence reflect that you notice her beyond the surface. That's how attraction deepens, desire grows, and connection strengthens naturally. 5. Relying on logic instead of connection backfires. One of the mistakes smart men often make is thinking that logic, reasoning, or problem-solving alone will win a woman over. You might be brilliant at analyzing situations, giving advice, or breaking down problems step by step. But here's the truth. Women don't fall in love with a man because he solves everything. We fall for the man who connects with us emotionally, who makes us feel seen, understood, and valued on a deeper level. I remember a guy I dated who was brilliant in his field. I'd share something personal, a challenge at work or a dilemma I was facing, expecting empathy, or maybe just someone to listen. Instead, he immediately went into solution mode. He offered advice, laid out steps, and tried to fix the problem. On paper, it seemed helpful. But emotionally, I felt unheard. I wanted connection first. Advice came later, if at all. Over time, I noticed myself withdrawing slightly, not because he wasn't smart, but because I wasn't feeling understood or emotionally engaged. Women crave emotional resonance. We want to feel your presence, your attention, and your understanding before logic steps in. When men rely solely on reason, we can sense a lack of emotional attunement, which diminishes attraction. Emotional connection builds trust, desire, and intimacy. Logic alone cannot replicate that. Another factor is that emotional availability signals confidence and strength. When you can sit with a woman's feelings, validate them, and engage without immediately trying to fix things, it shows that you're comfortable with yourself and capable of handling complexity. That's magnetic. Conversely, leaning too heavily on logic makes you appear detached, rigid, or emotionally unavailable. All things that subtly push women away, even if they don't consciously realize it. The key takeaway here is balance. Use your intelligence, problem-solving, and insight. They're valuable traits. But don't let them overshadow connection. Listen first, validate, and respond with empathy. When the emotional bond is secure, your advice or reasoning becomes more meaningful and welcomed. Without connection, even the smartest words can feel hollow. So, the lesson is simple. Women want emotional resonance more than solutions. Logic is powerful, but connection is essential. Mastering this balance is one of the ways smart men can avoid a common pitfall and create lasting attraction that goes beyond admiration to deep desire. 6. Failing to set boundaries makes you less attractive. Here's a truth many smart men overlook. Boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself. They're one of the strongest signals of confidence and value. When a man doesn't set limits around his time, energy, or personal life, it communicates neediness, availability, and a lack of self-respect. That may seem harmless, but women notice these things subconsciously, and attraction dips when boundaries are weak or non-existent. Boundaries create tension in the healthiest sense. They signal that you have priorities, a life outside the relationship, and standards for how you are treated. Women are drawn to men who respect themselves enough to enforce those standards consistently. That doesn't mean being inflexible or cold. It means understanding your worth and not sacrificing it to please someone else constantly. Another critical aspect is that boundaries prevent overinvestment too early. Smart men often fall into the trap of overgiving, whether that's attention, gifts, or emotional labor, before there's a reciprocal level of investment. This imbalance quickly diminishes attraction. Women feel it even if they don't say anything. When a man enforces boundaries thoughtfully, it naturally encourages respect, curiosity, and emotional investment. Boundaries also enhance emotional tension and anticipation. When you're selective with your presence, attention, or time, it creates a pull that constant availability cannot. We notice when a man isn't always at our disposal, and that scarcity increases value in subtle but powerful ways. It's not about playing games, it's about living intentionally and demonstrating that your life has meaning beyond immediate validation. Finally, boundaries communicate self-confidence. Women are drawn to men who can say no, who protect their energy, and who make decisions with clarity. That sense of inner strength, independence, and self-respect is magnetic. Without boundaries, a man can appear passive, unsure, or easily swayed, traits that diminish attraction even in otherwise intelligent or successful men. So, the lesson here is simple but vital. Respect your own life, enforce limits thoughtfully, and prioritize your energy. Boundaries are not selfish. They're a demonstration of value, confidence, and emotional intelligence. When you combine this with authenticity, emotional awareness, and selective presence, you naturally become more desirable, respected, and wanted. 7. Chasing approval steals your power. Here's a hard truth. Constantly seeking a woman's approval is one of the fastest ways to lose attraction. Smart men often make this mistake without realizing it. They want to be liked, admired, or validated, so they bend over backward to meet perceived expectations. The problem is, women aren't drawn to men who are dependent on our approval. We're drawn to men who have their own sense of worth and don't need constant reassurance. Approval seeking is subtle but obvious to us. It shows up in over-texting, excessive flattery, or constantly modifying your behavior to match what you think she wants. At first, it might seem like attention or interest is increasing, but it's actually diminishing your value. Women respond to power, confidence, and self-respect. When you rely on our approval to feel good about yourself, you shift the dynamic, and that's when attraction fades. The wake-up call is simple. Stop trying to earn her validation. Stop over-explaining, over-accommodating, or over-efforting to impress. The men who succeed aren't desperate for approval. They live fully, set boundaries, and engage from a place of confidence. That sense of independence naturally pulls women in because it creates respect, curiosity, and desire. Another mistake smart men make is confusing politeness with submission. You can be kind, thoughtful, and considerate without making your entire sense of self contingent on her reaction. Women notice when a man respects himself more than he fears losing her. That is magnetic. On the flip side, bending constantly for approval diminishes the tension, the mystery, and the excitement, all things that spark attraction. Finally, reflect on your patterns. Are you over-texting to see if she's interested? Are you constantly adjusting your behavior to make her like you? Are you giving more than you're receiving emotionally? If the answer is yes, it's time to shift. Real attraction comes from presence, self-respect, emotional intelligence, and a man who knows his own value. Approval seeking undermines all of that. So here's the bottom line. Reclaim your power. Live fully, invest thoughtfully, and engage intentionally. Women notice strength and independence far more than effort to please. When you stop chasing approval, you stop being predictable, And that unpredictability, combined with confidence and emotional presence, is what keeps her genuinely interested and emotionally invested. Let me leave you with something most women will never say out loud. We don't fall for the smartest man in the room. We fall for the man who actually understands himself. And that's why these 7 mistakes matter so much. Not because they make you a bad man, but because they quietly take away the very qualities that make you attractive in the first place. Women want a man who shows up confidently, who has boundaries, who doesn't chase approval, and who isn't terrified of disappointing us. We want a man who knows who he is, not a man who's constantly adjusting himself to keep us happy. And yes, that might sound controversial, but it's the truth. The more you lose yourself, the faster a woman loses interest. So if anything in this video made you think, or made you uncomfortable, or made you reflect a little, that's good. Growth starts with a shock to your system. And I promise you, when you stop making these mistakes, you won't just become more attractive to women, you'll become a stronger, more grounded version of yourself. Now, I genuinely want to hear from you. Which of these 7 mistakes have you caught yourself making? And which one hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments. I'll be reading them and I'll be replying, because these conversations matter, and I want to help you understand women in a way that actually improves your life. Thank you for watching, and remember, your power comes back the moment you stop giving it away.